20 seconds left.
And I was going to set a new team record for most victories in one season. And obviously continue to move up the mark for victories in a regular season.
Michael Morgan travels with the basketball. 5 ticks on the clock left. Redfield from outside. Shot will not go down, and the Hawkeyes have done it. What no other Iowa team has ever done. Their 24th win of the season. Tom Davis will go over and shake Judd Heathcote's hand. The final score, 93-64. Iowa with number 24.
Snake River, Wyoming and Old Milwaukee both mean something great to these guys. The Snake River means fly fishing for lunker cutthroat trout. And Old Milwaukee means a great beer. Cold, crisp Old Milwaukee beer. And smooth, golden Old Milwaukee Light.
There's nothing like the flavor of a special place. And Old Milwaukee beer.
Old Milwaukee and Old Milwaukee Light.
Fellas, it just doesn't get any better than this.
Build a solid foundation for your soybean weed control program. Apply Sonaland. You'll control tough grasses and weeds, even fight nightshade. Count on full season control without worry of carryover to injure next year's corn, milo, or wheat. Less cost than Lasso or Duo. Add it all up. Sonaland builds more value into your weed control program. Sonaland, your foundation for sharper full season weed control.
If the label on a paint can looks like it's been written in a foreign language, let your True Test paint specialist help decipher it. Just look for the Painting Help Spoken Here sign at your nearby True Value hardware store. It means that someone is specially trained to answer your questions on different types of paints, how to apply them, and what colors to choose. That way, the True Test paint you select will be perfect for your home and lifestyle. All you need to know is where to find Painting Help, your True Value hardware store or home center.
Probably heard talk about organophosphate insecticides failing in cornfields. It wasn't just talk. But there is an alternative, Furadan.
The Hawkeyes go to 24-4, 11-4 in the Big Ten. Michigan State falls to 10-15, 5-10 in the Big Ten. Number 24, very sweet.
Well, Michigan State, quite frankly, just not a good team. Playing out the season, at least that's the way they acted tonight. No point guard, no rebounding. 18-2 on those offensive boards unofficially. Iowa getting 18 of them, Michigan State just 2. They had those in the first half. But now it's Michigan, and it'll be Mo time. I think Mr. Mo may have something to say to Mr. Frieder. I think the Michigan people, Jones, B.J. Armstrong, Marble, they'll be excited about playing Michigan. Michigan, the only team in the Big Ten Iowa has not beaten. They will want that game and then look forward to next week, Wisconsin and Northwestern.
Special thanks to Brian Sines and Doug Schmidt, who have helped us out with statistics all year long as well. Once again, the final score here at Carver Hawkeye Arena. The Hawks win it 96-64, their 24th win of the year. The Hawks will make a network appearance this Saturday against Michigan. Then you can join Mac and me 1 week from tonight. Mark it down on your calendar, 7 o'clock for Iowa's game with Northwestern. You'll be able to see it all right here on the Iowa Television Network. Thank you for joining us, and good night. Tonight's game was brought to you in part by Elanco Products, who bring you Treflan and Sonaland for dependable full-season weed control in soybeans, and by Old Milwaukee Beer and Old Milwaukee Light. It doesn't get any better than this.
This has been a special presentation for the Iowa Television Network.
For years, soybean weed control has meant juggling grass herbicides with broadleaf herbicides to find just the right mix. And lately, a flurry of new products has made the choices even more complicated. Now there's a single pre-emergence product that controls both grasses and broadleaves. Introducing Turbo from Mobile. Everything you need in one jug. It's the simple solution you've been waiting for.
Decorate your home with the confidence of an interior designer using the rainbow of colors in the True Test custom color system from True Value hardware stores. It's arranged under natural home lighting, so you can find the True Test paint color that matches your furnishings or carpeting. Then select contrasting or related shades. You can easily beautify any room in your home using the rainbow of colors in the True Test custom color system, available exclusively at participating True Value hardware stores and home centers.
What's this?
A microwave.
Ah, an Amana radar range, huh? You always have to buy the best, don't you? The queen of Honey Bear Lane. You have to have the caviar when cheese curls will do. Box seats instead of bleachers. Silk instead of flannel.
Fred, it's a line from Amana priced under $300.
Oh.
So I bought two.
When you know exactly what you want, Amana.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Scott Pope. In just a minute, we'll be joining Tom Brokaw in Washington for an NBC special report on the release of the Tower Commission report. Now, because of the special, L.A. Law will run in its entirety this coming Sunday night at 11 o'clock. Again, L.A. Law at 11 o'clock this Sunday night. News Center 13 will immediately follow the NBC special report. So join us for a rundown of all the day's local news, weather, and sports at 10 o'clock. Now let's go to Tom Brokaw in Washington.
To stay on into next week to orchestrate the president's response. The centerpiece of that response will be a speech to the nation now planned for Wednesday. Sources say the president still refuses to apologize, but will deal with the Tower Board's main criticisms, that he let his foreign policy get out of control and traded arms for hostages. And officials say the choice of a new chief of staff can be used by the president to show he's finally taking charge of his own White House. Staff may not be so easy. Sources say former Transportation Secretary Drew Lewis has turned down the job. And two other candidates, Paul Laxalt and Treasury Secretary James Baker, are both known to have strong reservations about coming to the White House now. Tom?
The fact is, Chris, if the president picks up the telephone and says to Drew Lewis or to Jim Baker or Paul Laxalt, look, I know you have reservations, but I need you here now, don't you expect that those three team players would show up over there immediately?
Well, I think that certainly is true for Laxalt and Baker. It might be a little harder for Lewis, who has a big job with Union Pacific Railroad. He apparently wanted to come in on a part-time basis, and the Reagan said that was unacceptable, and at least for now, he isn't coming.
Thanks very much, Chris Wallace at the White House tonight. Two people who are familiar with the demands of life in the White House are with us as well tonight. Here in Washington, Republican Wyoming Congressman Richard Cheney, who is Chief of Staff for President Ford, and in New York, where he is now working on Wall Street, Larry Speaks, until recently, President Reagan's press spokesman. Larry, let's begin with you. As we all know, President Reagan has taken great pride, as have his admirers, in his hands-off style. But until today, we didn't really know that it was not just hands-off, but that he's been operating in a separate universe, practically, when it comes to foreign policy. Has the president's attention span gotten shorter in the last year, Larry?
No, not at all, Tom. I think you overstate a bit when you talk about a separate universe. The president has produced a foreign policy in 6 years that's worked extremely well. His management style has produced some tremendous successes both at home and abroad. So I think this is, as Senator Tower said, an aberration. It's something that happened because there was certainly a lapse in management at every level, and particularly in the NSC, where you had a staff that was running amok.
But an aberration suggests that it was just one kind of an episode. This was a whole pattern of deceit that went on for a year and a half in Central America, in Europe, in the Middle East. It involved secret bank accounts, and the president seemed not to know of any of that, except that he was willing to let it go forward because he thought we could get some hostages back, Larry.
Well, I feel that the president was ill-served by his advisors, not only during the course of the 18-month period, but more so after the story broke and he was not sufficiently informed by his advisors before he spoke to the nation. I think it was a poor staff job on the part of those people that were involved.
Larry, you were a member of the staff. Of course, you were a press spokesman at the time, but did you have any idea that this was going on just one floor below you?
No, Tom, mercifully, I was uninformed on that one. I spent 6 years telling them that I've got to know everything, but mercifully, they left me out of this one. I'll tell you this, though, after the story broke and we tried to get the facts out, the president, Don Reagan, and myself were misled by those very aides that were running that operation. And we did not have the facts at any time. And we're only beginning to see the truth come out now on what these people did during that 18-month period that they were involved with the Iranian arms deal.
Dick Cheney, you were a White House Chief of Staff. You're now a leading member of the Republican Party on Capitol Hill. Would you describe this as only an aberration?
I think it's more serious than that, Tom. I think it's important to put it in perspective. The president's had many notable successes and been one of the most successful presidents we've had in modern times. But this clearly was a major problem. I'm worried also about what happened at Reykjavik, for example, and I think the fact is there's been a major flaw or weakness, if you will, in the conduct of foreign policy for several months now.
You were there at the White House when the president underwent some bad times on your watch, President Ford, that is, the Nixon pardon, for example, Mayaguez. If you were advising this president, what would you say to him tonight about what he must do first?
Well, it seems to me the first thing is to take a few days and not rush to judgment, not run out and make some statement, but eventually when he does act, it has to be a fairly bold and decisive move. He needs to counter the basic criticism of the report, which is that he's been too disengaged. He needs to reassert himself, if you will, take control of foreign policy, be seen as forcing the process to produce some results. I think he probably needs to make some personnel changes. Clearly, Don Reagan is on his way out, and I think that's basically a plus. But most of all, Tom, I think it's a matter of establishing some very tough standards for the people who work for him and insisting in the future that they meet those standards.
Larry Speaks, let me ask you. Let me give you a characterization of the president at a meeting, for example, about some complicated foreign policy matters. This is not entirely hypothetical. I've had people who've been in those meetings describe for me, admirers of the president, how he sits at the end of the table, often doodling, listening to the conversation that is going on, a conversation very often led by Don Reagan or Admiral Poindexter. And then he seems to leave the meeting saying, well, you fellows kind of worry about that without any kind of detailed comment. Is that an overstatement on my part about the way the president operates?
Tom, I think it is to a certain extent. I've sat through many of those meetings during that time period and observed the president. Very often he would sit and listen and make notes or even doodle on a pad, but it didn't mean he wasn't listening. And very often these very advisors that thought they might be slipping something over on the president were surprised at the end when the president would sum up the meeting and say, this is what I want to do.
But this business of not being able to remember whether or not he authorized arms sales, that's the kind of thing that we'd all remember, it seems to me, whether or not we were familiar with the intricacies of government. If we said that you can sell arms to Iran through Israel, wouldn't you expect the President of the United States or the head of your company now, Larry, to know that kind of thing?
Well, Tom, the decision process on this and the briefing process of the president was not something that came to a head at one specific moment. It was a process that had been going on, a process in which the president was hearing bits and pieces as it developed. He set the broad policy guidelines, and his advisors, in a way, kept them posted. It's my estimation, and those were the meetings that I was not in on, that they only gave him just the tip of the iceberg and little periodic reports from time to time. That's where I think the failure was in keeping the president informed.
Thank you very much, Larry Speaks. Dick Cheney, quick final question. Big troubles for the Republicans in 1988?
That's up to the president, Tom. If he responds very forcefully and aggressively, takes the recommendations of the Tower Commission to heart, and acts on them, then there's no reason why it should have a lasting impact on the party. If he doesn't, if we see drift and disorder in the White House for the next several months, then I'm afraid it will indeed have a negative impact on us next time around.
Richard Cheney and Larry Speaks, thanks very much. In tomorrow morning's newspapers, the findings of the Tower Commission, of course, will be headlines all over the country. Those findings will also be discussed on the editorial pages. And tonight, we have gathered a sampling of some of those editorials that will appear in tomorrow morning's newspapers. The Los Angeles Times, for example, says the blame must go beyond the White House subordinates. Quote, first and foremost, it says, blame the leader, whose boredom with the nuts and bolts of governing let others run wild. The Chicago Tribune says the report left no doubt about who was responsible for this self-inflicted foreign policy wound, Ronald Reagan and Donald Reagan. The Louisville Courier-Journal says that Donald Reagan should quickly and unceremoniously resign. Secretary Schultz and Weinberger also must be replaced. The Wall Street Journal says the president's opposition should be required to make a specific case for what it calls the war it is waging against the presidency. And the New York Times says the president has so far refused to acknowledge anything more than that mistakes were made. He has much to answer for, according to the New York Times. The big question tonight is what President Reagan must do in the days and weeks ahead to salvage what is left of his presidency. Today, we ask that question of several people around the country, some of whom are close to the president. And we have 3 reports tonight from George Lewis, from Kenley Jones, and Fred Briggs. We start with George Lewis.
In California, Ronald Reagan's close friends and advisors were keeping quiet about the Tower report. Most, like his former Attorney General, William French Smith, refused comment, though Smith added a few words of encouragement.
Well, he has great powers of resiliency, and it is a difficult situation. But I think that if anybody can bounce back, he certainly can.
Smith and Ronald Reagan go back for more than 25 years, back to the time Reagan was governor of California. During that time, Reagan acquired a number of critics in this state. One is Paul Conrad, the editorial cartoonist for the Los Angeles Times, who, over the years, has frequently made fun of Ronald Reagan. But today, Conrad said the Iran-Contra affair does not gladden him.
There's not much joy in this whole thing. But I listened this morning. I just absolutely could not believe what I was hearing from this man.
The president's brother Neil, who lives near San Diego, was angry, blaming the press and politicians for blowing the affair out of proportion.
Don't you think that they didn't get off in the cloakroom, the Democrats, and say, now look, we're in a position. Should we bleed him from the top or bleed him from the bottom?
Both friends and critics agree the Ronald Reagan good guy image has been tarnished.
In Atlanta, a cold rain held down the number of shoppers in department stores where the Tower Commission's news conference played on multiple TV sets.
There's no question in my mind that he should have known. If he didn't, he was wrong, and if he did, he was wrong.
That opinion, that President Reagan was wrong to exchange weapons for hostages, is shared by the Reverend Benjamin Weir, a former hostage who may have been released as part of the arms deal.
I am very much interested in seeing hostages released, but I think other positive means should be employed than that.
I think the administration is as lame a duck as you've ever had.
Many politicians here, especially Democrats like Fulton County Commission Chairman Michael Lomax, believe it will be difficult for Reagan to restore his damaged credibility in the South. Among them is Georgia Governor Joe Frank Harris.
I'm not sure if he has enough time left in his administration to restore the credibility that he once had.
Atlanta Journal political columnist Bill Shipp believes Reagan can recover if he does certain things.
But I think he has to make a clear, clean breast of the whole affair, spell out exactly what his role was, what the role of his associates were, discharge those who may have been implicated or done something improper. I think he still has time, but I think time is running out.
Now that the Tower Commission has made its report, people here are waiting to see how President Reagan will respond to it and whether he will take steps to correct the mistakes the Commission says he made in handling the whole issue of arms sales to Iran.
In Boston, where political cynicism is as old as the city, Mayor Ray Flynn was particularly eager to hear what the president was going to say and wound up wishing he had said more.
I think he blew an opportunity to really get the facts on the table, to appeal to the American public.
Despite the president carrying Massachusetts in 1984, Boston is hardly Reagan country. It is still largely Democratic and liberal intellectual. At Harvard's John F. Kennedy School of Government, Professor Richard Neustadt, author of Presidential Power, thought of one step the president could take.
What he has to do, I suppose, is apologize for having staffed the White House so weakly. It's the kind of bunch of people who are just going to screw it up sooner or later. Same thing was true in Watergate, I think.
Tomorrow's Boston Globe will picture the president as a laurel betrayed by too many Hardys, the work of political cartoonist Paul Zepp, who thinks the Reagan presidency is now beyond salvage.
His physical capability really is I think that's the big issue. And I think that's the thing that makes him unbelievable now when he goes to the Congress and says, or goes to the American public and says, you know, I want to sell you Star Wars. They're going to say, you know, does he remember what Star Wars is all about?
There is hope the president will have more to say in addressing the report next week, but few expect him to say he's sorry.
Tower Commission member Brent Scowcroft is a man with very impressive credentials, former Air Force general, former national security advisor. This evening, I asked him whether he thinks it is possible for the president now to repair the damage that this crisis has done to the nation's foreign policy.
I don't think he can put it completely back together again, Tom, but I think he can operate a damage limitation exercise if he can say, all right, now the report's out, I understand what the problems are, it's my responsibility, I'm going to fix it, I've got 2 years left to go, and I'm going to operate.
Is this what happens when a president becomes almost too popular? He wins 49 states, he can do no wrong? Of course,
yes. I think you can see similarities. There are similarities to the Richard Nixon election in 1972, that people think they've got a mandate and therefore they don't have to worry about the kinds of details of process, laws, and so on and so forth.
What is the greatest risk for the United States in the 18 months remaining in Ronald Reagan's administration effectively in terms of our foreign policy, in your judgment?
I think one of the great risks is that something might happen in the Gulf, which would...
In the Persian Gulf?
In the Persian Gulf, that would demonstrate that the policy we've been following is a debacle. I have no indication that that will be the case, but to me that's a real peril.
And what about our relations with the Soviet Union in the 2 years that we have remaining?
I think there's still a chance to do something with the Soviet Union. It seems to me that Gorbachev has demonstrated that he wants to move. He has big troubles back home. He's shaking the bushes. I think he would like to have a period of stability in the relationship so that he can turn his attention to domestic affairs. That we could give him, perhaps.
Brent Scowcroft, a member of the Tower Commission. European allies have been cautious, at least publicly, over the Iranian affair, but uneasy as well, reflecting more and more concern about President Reagan's grip on foreign policy. NBC News correspondent Sandy Gilmore takes a look at the climate in the wake of this latest disclosure now.
At Britain's Oxford University, the Tower Commission report quickly turned a scheduled debate on arms policy into a debate about President Reagan's competence.
But it grieves me that anti-American feeling in Britain is, I'm sure, at a higher point now than it has been for the last 25 years.
To see a president crucified on a cross called freedom of information should renew our faith in the values that America stands for.
The Tower report led most newscasts in Britain, America's closest ally.
This is quite the worst day that this administration has had. It's gone from triumph to disaster in such a short time.
Italians were told Reagan will have to answer many more questions. German TV, next week could be the most important in Reagan's presidency.
Сегодня в Белом доме президенту Рейгану официально был передан доклад комиссии Тауэра.
Soviet TV tonight did not dwell on Reagan's problems except to say that the Tower report was sharply critical of White House officials. For many Europeans, the scandal confirms their worst fears about the U.S.
I'm afraid what it shows is a stupefying shambles at the very heart of American policymaking.
Others think the United States will somehow muddle through.
The United States seems to me to have a very remarkable capacity to survive these problems.
Even Ronald Reagan's European critics aren't taking much satisfaction from his problems. One of them said it's bad for everyone who regards the U.S. as the natural leader of the free world.
Dr. Henry Kissinger, who was the National Security Advisor for Richard Nixon before he went on to become Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, is in San Francisco tonight. Dr. Kissinger, in your judgment, what must the president do now to persuade our friends and our adversaries overseas that the foreign policy of this country is back on track? He's already appointed a national security advisor in Frank Carlucci. Must he do more?
Well, he has to state his program for the remainder of his administration, especially as far as East-West relations are concerned. Then he has to stop the fighting between the state and the Defense Department and crystallize a policy that is not a compromise between two warring principalities, but that reflects some clear national purpose. I believe he can do that. And if he does that, I think then we can get Iran in the proper perspective.
As you know, this report is also critical of Secretary of State Schultz and Secretary of Defense Weinberger because they knew what was going on and yet they did not intervene. Do you think that those two secretaries should resign?
No, but I think that the basic attitude of dumping everything on the president and letting him then, through his public relations skill, handle it, and distancing yourself from things that are unpleasant or you don't like, that has to end. And there were serious weaknesses. It's not conceivable to me how cabinet members know that a major policy is going on and neither go to the president and say, you simply cannot do that, nor help him make it more professional.
Based on what you have seen and heard so far, was there any part of this Iran initiative, in your judgment, that made sense?
Oh, the principle of improving relations with Iran would have made some sense if it had been done deliberately, if we had sent serious messages, if we had used responsible intermediaries, but nothing that was actually executed makes any sense to me.
But if you were still in government, Dr. Kissinger, my guess is that you would not want the position tonight of traveling to Europe or to Asia or to the Soviet Union to explain what has been described in such vivid detail now in the Tower Commission report.
I wouldn't try to explain it. I would say that we made a mistake in policy and we made a mistake in the selection of personnel. We have rectified both of these, and here is our policy for the future, and that is what we must be judged by. And after all, they don't have any alternative except to deal with the United States, which is still the strongest nation in the world. So
what about?
I think we should focus ourselves on the future.
Thank you, Dr. Kissinger. In the immediate future, there will be more questions asked about the Iran arms sales, the possible diversion of money to the Contras, what happened to a lot of that money, and the blame to be apportioned. House and Senate committees are already at work on their investigations, and several special prosecutors are looking into possible criminal charges against some of the principal people close to the president, Oliver North, Admiral Poindexter, and others. Even a year ago, ardent Reagan supporters could never have imagined that it could come to all of this, that the final 2 years of the Reagan presidency might slip into the shadows. Some are already talking about the good old days on the glory road, and these were some of those days.
I consider the trust that you have placed in me sacred, and I give you my sacred oath that I will do my utmost to justify your faith. These young Americans sent a message to terrorists everywhere. A message: you can run, but you can't hide.
Now, the greatest test of Ronald Reagan's 20 years in public life: how to repair his reputation as an effective president, how to demonstrate that the United States has a coherent foreign policy, how to repair his standing with Congress. In the past, this president has always been able to bounce back with a television speech, a series of personal appearances, a wave and a smile. But if there is a consensus among admirers and adversaries tonight, it is that this time, that won't be enough. Continuing coverage of this story tomorrow morning on NBC News at sunrise, followed by Today. For now, I'm Tom Brokaw, NBC News in Washington. Good night from all of us at NBC News.
I'm Bryant Gumbel. Tomorrow morning on Today, Tower Commission member Brent Scowcroft.
I'm Jane Pauley, also Richard Chamberlain and Valerie Bertinelli.
Join us tomorrow morning on Today.
In the wake of the Tower Commission report, what action will the White House take? Of the many criticized by the report, who will stay and who will go? Tomorrow on NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Just ahead from News Center 13.
An infant girl is found dead in Urbandale. The mother is 14 years old.
The Tower Commission delivers a scathing report on the Iran arms sale.
While a top state administrator is in danger of being ousted.
All of today's news, weather, and sports just ahead on News Center 13.
My message is short and sweet. Pounce costs about half as much as Laura's Band, and FMC guarantees that Pounce will control the cutworms in your corn all season long. That's it. Now that you know that, we obviously have some time left. So I'd like to show you some pictures of my grandchildren. This